This is National Indigenous Peoples Day. Ceremonies and events across the country offer the opportunity to explore and appreciate the culture of Canada's Indigenous peoples.
I'm going to ask our Creator to bless us all on this beautiful, beautiful day, and to keep us safe and to help us be good to each other, kind to each other.
There was a traditional ceremony in Ottawa this morning. It was led by First Nations, Métis and Inuit elders. The Prime Minister is on the West Coast, marking Indigenous Peoples Day in Prince Rupert, British Columbia, where, along with First Nations leaders, he signed an environmental protection agreement.
Today is a very big day for both reconciliation and environmental protection in Canada. Today, we celebrate Canada's first ever Reconciliation Framework Agreement for Bioregional Oceans Management and Protection, which involves 14 First Nations along the Pacific Coast. This is an important commitment to regional partnership in the task of ocean management.
All right, I want to bring in my colleague, the CBC's Evan Dyer, to take a closer look at this. Evan, what is this agreement all about?
Well, this is another chapter in the rollout of the government's Ocean Protections Plan, which is a $1.5 billion plan to create marine protected areas, new traffic corridors and regulations for shipping and so on, and just generally protect oceans and coastlines. But what makes this one a little bit different, and the Prime Minister referred to it there, is that it's also a cooperative project where the federal government will share responsibility for this stretch of coastline and ocean with 14 different First Nations who've all agreed to take part. I must say it's a little short on details so far, Peter. We haven't really heard exactly what new rules will be put in, if any, or where new shipping channels might go, but it's safe to say that one of the concerns that all of the parties share is the preservation of salmon, which is, of course, a very important resource in that part of the world. And the affected area will extend from the northern tip of Vancouver Island all the way up to the Alaska Panhandle. Let's listen again to Prime Minister Trudeau describing it.
This is a concrete and tangible step as to what reconciliation is and can look like, not just for here, but for other parts of the country as well. The leadership shown by the First Nations here.
You can't help but sort of wonder if the concerns about the Trans Mountain Pipeline enter into all of this, Evan.
Well, yes, and there's a sort of a strange contrast emerging, isn't there? The Trans Mountain Pipeline, of course, is a long way away from this area, but there was a pretty significant spill there a couple of years ago. It was actually a tug that spilled about 23,000 gallons of diesel into the water off Bella Bella, and there was a lot of criticism for how that spill was handled, doubts about who exactly was responsible. But what we've seen emerge since then is a really different regime for Kinder Morgan and the south, where we are seeing new pipelines being built and expecting an increase in tanker traffic. And this area where the Prime Minister was today, where there's a moratorium on tanker traffic and the Northern Gateway pipeline was rejected, and we see today further steps to protect the waters there. So unlike the situation in the Kinder Morgan area, where you have First Nations divided and on both sides and protests, where the Prime Minister was today, we see the First Nations all united on the same page, and he called this a reconciliation framework agreement, and it really is as much about reconciliation as it is about oceans. Let's listen to him again.
This is a concrete and tangible step as to what reconciliation is and can look like, not just for here, but for other parts of the country as well. The leadership shown by the First Nations here over millennia, but also these past years, in coming together to create a framework that will set the bar for how we move forward, not just here, but across the country.
So still some important details to be ironed out. Not only what will the plan do about salmon, for example, what will be the details of that part of it, but also how the different governments will cooperate, who will take precedence if there are disagreements and questions of that kind. But that's an awful lot of governments that are going to be cooperating together, the federal, provincial, and 14 First Nations. One other important thing I should mention, Peter, that the Prime Minister said today is that we should expect another marine announcement tomorrow, this one about whales. He didn't say where, but I think it's probably reasonably safe to assume this has to do with the North Atlantic right whale on Canada's other coast and in the Gulf of St. Lawrence, where we've been seeing a lot of tension over whale protection areas and lobster fishing.
Indeed we have. Evan, thanks as always.
Thanks, Peter.
Evan Dyer in Ottawa.